I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?
Hello and welcome to Bound for Glory, the only AFL show on SYN. We've got a massive show once again. We're covering all the AFL from this week, previews and reviews, and we've got an interview with Christian Salem, who is a top draft pick this year. He's a very promising player and he should go high in the draft, and we'll also discuss the number one draft pick that GWS will likely hold and where it might go and what value it might hold. But nonetheless, I think we should kick off with, go in order. We'll go Friday night, North versus Carlton, and North Melbourne did it again.
Don't worry, no one else is here to introduce.
I'll introduce the panel first.
Yes, I'm Peter Williams.
I'm Ashley Craven.
I'm Damon Jackman.
And I'm Ethan. But yes, North, they lost again. That's their fifth loss by under 6 points, I think, this year. And it was just... I think it was inevitable. I think by the time they started that last quarter chase, I think you knew that this is going to be close and Carlton's probably going to win once again. But they gave it a good crack and just fell short in the end.
I think the only upside to it was that they weren't leading and then, lost. So that was a good thing. But they did put up a good fight. And as Ben was saying last week, I think if there was another 2 minutes to that game, I think North Melbourne probably would have won. That was a very tense game.
And when Carlton were up by 33 points in the third quarter, Ashley and I were at the game, and I actually said that it was kind of reminiscent of the week before, North against Brisbane, when they're up by 33 points, and I thought, this isn't a good omen. I can see reverse North happening here and them coming back and giving us a bit of a challenge, which they did. But it was a good game in the end, but lucky to get away with the win.
Yeah, no, it was at least quite a bit close for most of the game once they hit came right back in the last quarter. And it was quite interesting, quite a few moments in that last quarter that could be remembered. Obviously, Cruiser mark, and he had the shot on goal, which really could have sealed it completely. And
he was fantastic in that last quarter, wasn't he?
He took several key marks. Pretty much all he needed to do otherwise was just kick that goal and really seal it. But apart from that, he was fantastic.
Took a knock to the head and came back flying, so I think he should get a knock to the head more often. He was great in that second half.
Should be bandaged up every single week.
I think so.
I think he had 7 disposals in that last quarter. He took a few pivotal contested marks really late when North were really firing as well. So it was a very big game for him, especially with all the criticism he's had over the past couple of weeks. He's been labelled a B grader, he's been labelled ineffective. And it was really good showing from him.
And the ones to kill us, of course, as they have I think every matchup has been Petrie and Thomas. Thomas was he was the one who did the damage early. He ended up kicking 6 goals in the end. I think 2 of those were gimme goals over the top, and when Carlton were kind of found out to be falling behind the play, or not falling behind, I guess, and quick over the top one to Lindsay Thomas running into an open goal. He killed us. But another one, of course, was Petrie. Kicked 4 goals, and he really stood up in the end and did most of the damage. And we were lucky in the end to kind of climb, because I think Jamison, he was kind of off on his game on the night, and very lucky.
I think on Thomas, 2 of them probably were gimme goals, but the other 4 were absolutely brilliant. I think that goal where he dummied around 3 players and just slotted it calmly from 40, that was absolutely fantastic. He's got a very good record against Carlton. I think he averaged nearly 4 goals a game against them, and he
10 in the last 2.
And that was 10 in the last 2, and that was before Friday night. So he's got a fantastic record against them, and I don't know where that leaves him in the column, but it's still very high up there, and it's a fantastic transformation from him.
And good also to see Carlton's 3 small forwards up in action all together. Garlick kicking 4 goals and Yaron and Eddie both kicking 2. And then also allowing for Henderson to kick 3. So had a bit of versatility in our forward line, but it was good to see all those 3 working together and up again.
I think I saw some stat that it's the first time that all of Betts, Yaron and Gala have kicked multiple goals in the game since 2010.
Well, that's just great. Seeing as how they've been working this year together, they haven't been really meshing well.
well, Garlett was in form at the start of the year, and that's pretty much it from those three. I mean, Yaren had a couple of good games, but you haven't really seen much great football from them this year, and they really did turn it on Friday night.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting. Where do we go for here for both sides? Obviously, Carlton bounced back into the 8 and then got bumped back out Port last night. But North sort of are sitting around. They've got a great percentage. Like, you'd have to say it's going to be
lose
tough.
So many close games.
Yeah, it's tough to know. Are they still a chance for the 8 just because of their percentage?
No, I think they're 12th or 13th now. They're 6 and 10, so they've got to win every game from here pretty much. I think with how tight it is around that 8th spot, with there's Port Adelaide, there's Carlton, there's
West Coast,
there's West Coast, there's Brisbane are even coming up, there's Adelaide, so there's a lot of teams in contention that really should push for that spot, and North has fallen way behind the pack, and then there's Gold Coast as well, who they won yesterday as well, so I think that's probably all over for North.
And what do you guys make of Matthew Watson's game on Friday night? I thought he was actually pretty good. Did you guys see the bomb that he kicked?
He's a big kick
from kicking out, and he kicked into the square. That was massive. But I think he actually played all right.
He's done it a few times. I think he's one of those defenders that I think because Carlton haven't really got many great key defenders that have really established themselves so well. I mean, there's Jamison and Henderson, but now Henderson's gone up forward. You've got to have something to fill the void, and I think Watson's he's just starting to do that. I mean, he's a top draft pick. He's 2021. He hasn't really established himself just yet, but that's the sort of game that gives you that hope that he really can become a top player. I
think you're spot on, Ethan. If you put Henderson in the forward, he definitely needs someone to cover down back, and if Watson can do that, then that sort of solves Carlton's forward woes. I think we'll move on now to a game last night,
another close one at Eddie.
Yeah, another close one. Saints and Port, and a bit under controversial circumstances.
Oh, I didn't think so.
No? Everyone seems to be raving about it, so...
I thought it was shocking umpiring both ways, personally. I mean, you look at I think the Pittard decision was probably the one that stood out. There was a tiny flick in his back from one of the Saints players, and he kept running, and he was fine. He was barely knocked off balance. The umpire said, no, we're going to come back and take a free kick, and then Delstano whacked it out of his hands. He's played 250 games. He's 30 years old. He shouldn't do that. I think that's much more that's much more of a talking point than the actual free itself. And then I think there was one in the middle that Nick Brewell should have capitalised on. There was a free kick in the centre that was a push in the back to St Kilda that really wasn't. It was player lie on the ground, and Port Adelaide player comes and tackles behind him. So it went both ways. It was pretty good until the last quarter basically, and I think it went both ways. So I didn't see much of it.
Port Adelaide did have a considerable lead, though, throughout most of the game, so it was a bit surprising that St Kilda managed to come back and get so close. And it's you sort of think now, what's happening with the Saints? They're sitting down very low on the ladder. What do you think's happening? Is it just a development year, or are they
development year?
Yep.
Yeah.
And who do you think is standing up, or who do you think will be the future?
Jack Stephen.
The one and only.
The one and only Jack Stephen. My God, he was brilliant that last quarter. He had 12 disposals, and that goal he kicked on the run, he took about 3 bounces with a player on his, right on his heels. He just burst along the wing and slotted it coolly from 50. It was absolutely fantastic to watch. He's 23 years old. He's played about 60, 70 games, and he's really started to establish himself this year because he's really got a lot of consistency in his game. I was looking at his stats last night. He's dropped under 20 disposals once this season, and that game he had 19. So, he's been remarkably consistent. Probably should win St Kilda's best and fairest if Riewoldt and Montagna, I don't know, maybe drop off a little bit in the latter half of the year. But I think Stephen is a real crack at that, actually.
Does anyone know what happened to Ollie Wines? Because I'm just looking at the stat sheet now, and he only had 8 disposals, which isn't really like him. So, was he injured, or was he just playing poorly?
He's a young player, though. It's to be expected. I know there's some freaks like O'Meara and stuff like that are just good all year, that are built and obviously had the extra year, but I mean, young players will generally drop off, most of them, especially ones that go as hard at it as he does. So I think there's probably just season fatigue, if anything.
Yeah, I don't think you can book in a first-year player to have 20 disposals every single game. I think for every very good game that, an Ollie Wines will have, there's going to be a game like this where, he doesn't find much of the footy, he, has relatively little impact. But luckily for him, Port Adelaide's midfield was ballistic in that first quarter. Players like Wingard, Ebert, Hartlett, Boak, Gray, there's so many names in that midfield that really did step up. Chad Wingard again, he's in all Australian form, and if he's not locked in on a half-forward flank, I don't know what's going on. And he was fantastic once again last night, and there's such quality players and such depth in this Port Adelaide midfield. It's going to be scary in a few years.
And just on their tall forwards, Cozzy, will he get another game, do you reckon? Because they've got McAvoy kicked 3, he drifted up forward last night, kicked 3, and the other tall in Tom Lee, he kicked 2. So do you reckon Cozzy's going to get another game?
Well, if they can function with 3 tall forwards, then yeah, I think. Well, they've also got Tom Hickey, and it depends whether you want to play Hickey, who's a 21-year-old promising ruck, or you want to play Kaziski, who's probably good for a goal a game and 10 hit-outs and is on the way out. I think the Saints would probably think, okay, we're a young team, we're probably better off playing Hickey at the moment.
Has Cozzy played his 200th yet?
Yeah, he's on 199.
No.
I think they'll give him his 200th, and that'll be it.
In the last round,
and that'll be it. He gets his 200, he gets whatever his name on the locker or whatever, and that'll be it.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, because he's been a very good servant despite all his injuries and everything over his career. And he did win that Rising Star Award, I think, in 2001 or 2002, and he's had a good career, not probably the career you'd hope for. I think being taken behind someone of the calibre of Nick Rewalt, but it's still a very good career. I think few people get to carve out 200 games, and I think he would deserve it if he got there.
We should move on probably to the other game yesterday. A bit of an upset down at up at Gold Coast. Gold Coast and Collingwood, and Gold Coast managed to get up. So that was a bit of a surprising win. But what do you think about Gold Coast playing at Metricon? Is that a massive threat now?
I think it is. I think now that they've toppled a team that is as good as Collingwood, it's it's probably going to leave a shadow of doubt in teams that travel up there now. I think they also did it to Freo last year. They came within 7 points, and Freo was starting to get starting to kick into gear last year as well when that happened. And Gold Coast are a team it's also like Brisbane as well. These teams that are in like the 8th or 13th bracket, these interstate teams, they do have considerable home ground advantages, and they are a threat. If a team was caught off guard like Collingwood was last night, they ran at probably 80%, and it really did cost them in the end.
Now, how about Gary Ablett? 49 disposals.
This man is ridiculous.
If this man does not win a Brownlow this year, I do not know what is going on.
I've said for a month how they can not send anyone to him, like any team at all. They just sort of stand a couple of metres off him.
I was surprised they still didn't send McCaffrey to him, even a quarter time when he had about 25 disposals. I would have thought Buckley would say, okay, McCaffrey shut down people before you sent McCaffrey to him.
That's the main reason why I didn't actually, just on the Supercoach front, why I didn't select him as captain, because I thought McCaffrey was going to play on him, and he's actually taking a few
I was
scalps.
shocked when they played McCaffrey up forward, because I was thinking surely there's the obvious kind of match-up there at least. Even if he doesn't do anything, at least he's there.
Was it a defensive forward role on Mackenzie, was it?
Yeah.
Which is a good role to play, because Mackenzie's a damaging player. But if you're going to let
compared to Ablett though,
run around and have 49 disposals, and it wasn't like his 53 last year that he got against Collingwood.
These were
at the MCG either. This was winning hard ball and kicking it forward. He had 10 clearances, 20 contested possessions. It's ridiculous numbers.
And I think it's time for Buckley to make a few hard calls and drop a couple of really key players, and starting with Heath Shaw, who's had one tackle and one pressure act in a loss as a defender. That just can't happen. How you can even justify that, I don't know. And Andrew Cracker as well, he had as many tackles as I did sitting on the couch watching the footy, and he only had 4 pressure acts. So both of them were terrible. And that's why he was subbed off. And Mooney, who was subbed on, often cops a lot of flack, but at least he had 3 tackles and 9 pressure acts, which is more than both of those guys put together.
That's in a quarter and a half, so yeah, it's a good effort.
And obviously some people, say Cloak, for example, didn't have a lot and things like that. He didn't play that well, but they're key players, and you think, oh, okay, fair enough, they're key players, ruckman, etc., they're not going to have heaps. To give you an example, Tom Nichols, who obviously is athletic, but he's still a ruck, had 8 tackles and 20 pressure acts. So how you can justify that for the smaller players who are renowned for their, tackling and their pressure, like Shaw and Cracker, it's ridiculous. So
Now, I was actually discussing this on Friday night when we were watching Carlton with Damon, and we thought if Chris Yarran was to leave Carlton and he went to Collingwood, who would you sort of get rid of? And now that you've mentioned Cracker and how poor that he's had a game, would you be willing to get rid of Cracker for Yarran?
Of course you would. Yarran's a top 10 draft pick who's 22, 23, and Cracker's 30, 31, and hasn't got many games left in him. I think.
Yeah, well, age-wise, yeah. I don't know whether it'd be either would really be that good at the moment.
Oh, Yarran's a bit inconsistent, but
just a little bit.
But no, I think he's starting to play well the last couple of weeks, probably because he wants to get a good trade deal, in my opinion. But
as we were saying actually on Friday night, he's got all the talent, but it's just a case of, he's a talented player, but he's got, I think, disciplinary issues, I think, or mental issues in the terms of that he knows he's got the talent, but he thinks he can just get past on the talent alone without any effort. And until he realises that, he has to put some effort in, I think, he will eventually become a good player, but... Yeah.
Well, I'd be disappointed playing against GWS this week if we don't see Shaw on the outs, to be honest. Him and Cracker should really be dropped for their efforts. And against GWS, you can probably afford it, but I'd probably do it against anyone playing.
I really do think that's harsh on Heath Shaw. I think, given his form over the entire season, I think, that's got to hold some merit.
He's been pretty inconsistent.
Yeah, he's been pretty crap, in my opinion. He had one really good game against the Bulldogs. But apart from that, I haven't seen him do a lot.
I thought he's been one of your better players, personally, from what I've watched of him this year. And, he's been good defensively. And I think, he's one of those players that you need in form, especially in finals. I think getting a game against GWS and, say, racking up 20 disposals and, controlling the back line is something that he sure needs because, he's a very important player. We've seen him be a very important player over the past few years for Collingwood. And we know Collingwood are going to play finals and, they're probably going to play elimination finals every single week, depending on how far they go into finals. So I think, they need Heath Shaw in form and, rebounding against GWS, quite literally is, the way to do it.
And we spoke before of Ollie Wines. Now, Jaeger O'Meara, I think, it's obvious he's got the Rising Star Award wrapped up, but he played another blinder. He kicked 3 goals, and I was surprised to see he's actually only had 23 possessions because listening to it on the radio as well, I mean, he was mentioned that many times, and the commentators were exploding over him, I suppose, for lack of a better word, but he played another good game.
Yeah, I think Jaeger O'Meara he was best on ground until Ablett had 15 and that ridiculous goal in the last quarter, but busting out of a pack like there was nobody else on the ground. So, it was a fantastic game. Kicking 3 goals as a midfielder is a very tough effort, winning as much ball as he does, consistently as well. I don't think there's been a standout rising star contender for so long. Really, he's been fantastic. But I think we should go to some sim messages. Keep texting us in on 0427 767 767 or online at sin.org.au. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we'll be back after these messages.
Big Day Out are proud to present US Indie Kings Passion Pit. Returning to Australia this month, bringing their explosive live show to the Palace on Tuesday, 30th of July. Tickets on sale now from bigdayout.com.
Sin sponsor.
Tune in to We Need to Talk About Film on SYN to hear interviews from film buffs and reviewers from all around Australia. And of course, hear some funky tunes from your favourite films to get you through your Saturday night. Tune in to We Need to Talk About Film with me, Georgia, from 6 p.m. on Saturdays here on SYN.
Have you ever been listening to the radio and thought, being on the radio would be pretty swell. I'd love to be a radio presenter. But then thought, wait, that's going to take a lot of work, and I have school to focus on. What if I told you your school could get you on the radio and during school hours? Oh my god! Schools on Air is a program where your class can host their own radio show each week for an entire term. And what are the topics you can talk about? Whatever you like.
Right now, we are doing How Loud is Too Loud to Sing in Public. Oh, Today we're talking about pitting two celebrities in a cage match.
Now, for this segment, we're going to be appreciating all the little things in life.
Your show is your show. If you think this is for you, contact us on 9925 4747 or head to syn.org.au/learn.
You're listening to Bound for Glory on SYN, and just like to welcome another panellist, Matt Joyce. Thank you for rolling out of bed today, Matt.
No worries. We couldn't discuss Melbourne and Brisbane without me.
Oh, no.
Game of the round. So let's go right into that, Ethan. What are you thinking for this? I mean, it was a closer game than many would have thought. I really wanted Brisbane to get pumped just because of how cocky their supporters seem to be all season for no reason. No reason at all. Like, especially on the Big Footy Forum, which most of us frequent.
Not me.
Most of us. But after the pre-season, they were intolerable, and now we're getting threads like, oh, will Richmond choke and get out of the 8? If they were to lose to Melbourne, I would have loved that. But no, it was an admirable performance by the D's, and they really stayed in it for the whole game, really.
I thought it was a typical Darwin game. It was difficult to watch. The skills weren't exactly that great. It was two bottom 10 teams, fighting it out in a relatively close contest, and eventually Brisbane came away with the win, by 16 points or so. And I think they have the quality midfield that Melbourne don't. And I think that's what they struggled to get away for a half, but they did control it for the majority of the game. I think Melbourne's goals in the first quarter, where they kept themselves in it. They were relatively over the top. Kick it to Jack Fitzpatrick, who kicked 3 in that first quarter and injured his knee and kicked in the last. So. It was a good performance from Melbourne. I think it was sort of like what they did against Geelong, where they had 19 inside 50s, but they still had 10 scoring shots. I think once they do hit an inside 50, they do score. So they did it once again. That once they do win it from the midfield, they will keep scoring as well. So promising signs there. But we know Brisbane are a decent team and much better than Melbourne, so yeah. I think the result pretty much followed what I think everyone was tipping.
And this season's really shown not a bias, but the mobile kind of skinny looking rucks are in favour, because Leuenberger's doing quite well, and Tom Nichols, who we've all been ranting and raving about,
but he's been fantastic.
Yeah. But Leuenberger, he was supposed to have like a 6-week injury, and he was back in 2 weeks for starters, and then he's just gotten straight back into that great form. Tom Rockcliffe is in great form again. I really do like Brisbane's midfield, just especially the core group they've got there. They need a bit more depth. And a bit more class on the outside, I suppose. Was Yo dropped last week or something like that? Because he was an in this week.
He was an in this week. I think he was dropped the week before. I think, as you said, with their midfield depth, I think he's one of those players that, I think Mitch Golby's starting to do it, and he was out, of course. I think Elliot Yo and players like, I think James Polkinghorne as well. I think he's another one that comes off the top of my head that players that aren't really establishing themselves on the side. I think they're players that need to become a part of the midfield rotation at Brisbane. When players like Redden and Rockcliffe and Rich don't perform, you need to fall back on these players. Golby's done that. I don't think there are too many others that have. So I think it's something that Brisbane need to work on in a few years. But still, having a midfield of the calibre of Redden, Maloney, Rich, Rockcliffe, Black's still there.
Even Zorko can go through.
Even Zorko, and again, he hasn't been in that great form this year, part of that midfield. So, it's a very formidable midfield, and once it gets all together, I think it's going to be pretty damn good in a few years.
Yeah, definitely. And Pierce Ainley, another great game from him, one of the best Irishmen in the game. And how good has Brett Staker's comeback been?
Oh, it's been fantastic. He slotted in. He hasn't missed a beat at all. He's played a bit down back, but he's played a lot forward. How many goals did he kick last night? He kicked
3 goals too.
3 goals too.
And he's a contested marking machine.
Yeah, and I think with Brown out, they really did need that as well, because Jordan Lyle came in and he didn't do that well. So
he tends to, Lyle kicks 7 in the AFL, doesn't he? And everyone's like, bring him in, but then he does nothing.
I could kick 7 in the AFL.
But, I mean, does that really... At least they're getting better with the competition at state level, and it's scary to see... Do you know if Brisbane's academy players are playing in the NEAFL this year, or are they still restricted to playing under 18s?
Not entirely sure.
Yeah, because they've got 4 or 5 coming through, I think, that they should be...
Yeah, I think all their draft picks this year will be, those zone selections.
Yeah.
And we've seen them. There've been some good zone selections in the past as well. So, there's a few coming through for Brisbane this year.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but pretty much all went to plan. Something that went a bit less.
And Jack Watt's playing well as well. It was nice to see.
Always nice to see that.
Yeah, 10 marks. He looked okay out forward, and unfortunately for Melbourne as well, Colin Garland going down with a knee injury. He wasn't weight bearing at all when he limped off. He did look very uncomfortable. So he's probably leading Melbourne's best and fairest at the moment. So hopefully that that doesn't see him out for very long. So.
Quite unfortunate, really.
Yeah, quite unfortunate.
I'd say he's been your best player all year.
He's been Melbourne's best, definitely. Moving on to Essendon GWS, I think in the end also went according to plan, but not for the first half. I think GWS, they did it again. They've done it twice to Essendon this year. They fought hard early, they led at half time, and they were very competitive once again. And we've said it all year. They've got such talented players that haven't really kicked into gear. They won 2 or 3 games last year, and they're still winless this year, and they haven't really improved to the level we thought they would. And it's the sort of game that gives you that glimmer of hope. That GWS will be a formidable team in a few years. So it was a very good performance from them, even though they didn't come away with the 4 points. Looking
at Gold Coast and how they perform, do you think that GWS will be at the same level next year? Or because a lot of people have said that GWS aren't tracking as well as Gold Coast, and that they are, they've got a lot of younger players and that sort of thing. So compared to Gold Coast, Gold Coast have a few more leaders, whereas GWS still have those inconsistent young players. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, it was the different recruiting strategies, really. So Gold Coast went for a few more mid-age players that are really approaching their prime, whereas GWS went young, Tom Scully, Callum Ward, old. So obviously they're going to need a couple more years. So I think they'll probably be next year where Gold Coast was last year, and then the year following they might even leapfrog where Gold Coast are this year.
It's worth noting though that at the start of this season that everyone was saying how GWS were ahead of Gold Coast because Gold Coast hadn't done a lot last season, whereas GWS had come out of the blocks and arguably had a better first season than Gold Coast, and then all of a sudden this season Gold Coast have really shot up.
Knee-jerk reactions, I think.
Yeah, and I really want Jeremy Cameron in my team. He's so good.
I think everybody does. Kicking another 4 goals, he probably could have had 6 or 7 if he kicked straight. So, he's kicked 43 goals for the season in a team that's not getting the ball inside of 50 very much, if at all.
And he missed 2 or 3 weeks as well, didn't he, with injury?
Don't think so. I think he might have been rested for 1
or 2. Yeah,
1 or 2.
And it's ridiculous. And Jonathan Giles chiming in with another 4, which is great to see. Good to see the young ruckman who had a lot of contract disputes at the end of last season. He's really stamping himself as I am the number 1 ruckman. Pay me. Yeah. And Travis Collier, who's had quite a few knockers at Essendon. 4 goals and really a best on ground performance, I'd say. Provided run, his disposal lets him down sometimes, but I thought he was quite admirable in the game yesterday.
And just on Jeremy Cameron, the thing that impresses me most about him is his second and third efforts. There was one bit of play there, I can't forget who the Essendon player was, but he was standing on the mark, Jeremy Cameron, ended up smothering the ball, gathering it and kicking it around his body. That was just amazing. It was like he was like a third, fourth year player, but amazing.
I think on the topic of GWS tall forwards, I think one that really hasn't got the credit he deserves this year is Adam Tomlinson. He had another fantastic game yesterday. He's one of those top draft picks from that first year. I think he was either a pick 9 or a pick 11. And that's ahead of players like Toby Green, Devon Smith. Players that have established themselves. And he's been that second tall forward. He's been pushing up the ground to give Cameron space. He had 23 disposals and a goal yesterday as a leading forward, a high half forward. It was another fantastic game from him. He's really kicked on this year. I've been really impressed by him.
And it's good to see GWS get over 10,000 again at their home ground.
I think part of that would have been the A-League All-Stars United game. I think they were handing out free tickets for that.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of people though did fly up. I did see a lot of tweets and Facebook statuses of Essendon supporters flying up. So I was quite interested about that.
Yeah, it was a good initiative getting the crowd in. I think that's all they have to do is establish even a sort of not a dedicated fan base, but people who will
following.
a following that, people that will turn out to, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 games a year. Even that is a start. Seeing crowds of 5,000-6,000 isn't healthy for GWS, and it isn't something that will see them develop as a team. Something that's embedded in Western Sydney. So, having 10,000-11,000 turning out to a game is fantastic.
In all honesty, there's been talk if Buddy Franklin goes to GWS, it'll grow the crowd, it'll grow the game, it'll grow everything. Do you actually think it will do anything?
Oh, barely.
I really don't think it will. I think it's just this big media beat up about how, Buddy will go in and everything will be alright.
I think with the, I think even like the people that, watch the A-League and watch the NRL, they tune in for round 1, I think. They'll watch Sydney GWS because it's the derby, blah, blah, blah. And if they see Buddy and they'll see him kick, 4 or 5 goals, they'll think, crap, who's this guy? And, I need to see if he's any good, because if that's really the selling point of this. If they can, the battle of the bridge, if they can make that close, then, it's really good for the brand. And I thought, with the initiative for giving away A-League tickets, GWS certainly didn't disappoint themselves, and the players, and the crowd would be more likely to, go see them next week and the week after if they keep putting up consistent performances like this under, 8 goals or so.
Yeah, one way you can gauge it, I guess, is having a look at historically when Sydney moves, or they were South Melbourne, moves up to Sydney, and then they got Tony Lockett. I guess that helped them grow the game up there, but they did have the supporter base already down here. But I guess that's the only way you can kind of gauge whether or not it's going to, like Buddy's going to have an effect when he goes up there, if he goes up there.
Yeah, but, I hope he does. Hawthorn are better with him gone.
Yeah.
And GWS need him, so...
Do they, though?
Yeah, I think they do.
As a leader or as a player?
As a player. He's not a leader at all.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, Hawthorn were better once again without him yesterday, getting another win on the board. Jared Roughhead kicking his 50th goal for the season. They got over the line. I think, the Dogs kicked in a little bit late. They kicked the last 4 goals to make it look closer than it really should have been, but... Hawthorn were on top from, the first bounce, so they, really probably kicked, they didn't kick as many goals as they should have. They were a little bit wayward in front of goal, but, it was another good game from Hawthorn.
Yeah, 9 more scoring shots for the Hawks. Was it a bit windy down at Tassie?
Yeah, I think it always is.
Yeah, because it's certainly not the sort of scoreline that you expect from Hawthorn with, dead eyes in front of goal like Jack Gunston and Jared Roughhead. Gunston was...
he kicked 0 goals 3.
Yeah, so
that's very unlike him.
Yeah, extremely unlike Jack Gunston, and I think it's really up to him if the Hawks are going to step up and be a serious contender for the flag in 2013, because you're always going to get a lot of attention going to Roughhead and Buddy, and the form Roughhead's in, it doesn't really matter right now, but Franklin tends to not perform in the really big stages. He either kicks inaccurately or he doesn't impact the game at all. And I'm just talking grand finals, because he obviously did have that win in 2007 against Adelaide where he kicked the goal in the last, minute.
He kicked 7.
About to mention that
I'm saying
game.
like the really big stage, so the grand final. He hasn't really burst the game apart in the grand final. A lot of Hawthorn supporters that I know actually argued that if Buddy wasn't playing, they would have won last year because he kicked 3 goals 5 or something.
No,
like
he was one of their best players on the day.
They might just be biased, but but I don't know. It was just like, we've got players like Gunston who can kick straight. But whatever. Franklin, well, the stats show that they're better without him. So I don't think it matters. The compensation won't be that great. So that's the unfortunate thing. But, what are they going to do? If he's getting $2 million thrown in his face, then he's not going to see
You can't do much about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think...
Same with Scully. You can't really be bitter about that.
Same with Ablett as well. Yeah. When these players get 1.5 million, 2 million as Buddy's getting offered, reportedly, these players getting chucked that amount of money at them is an offer they can't refuse, because AFL careers, they're so short. You got to make the most of it. If Buddy's going to get the option of choosing between 600,000 at Hawthorn and 2 million at GWS, I think which one he's going to weigh them up, and I think it's a pretty. It's a pretty standout call which one he'd go for.
And just for the Dogs, they've always had a lack of quality tall forwards, I guess, and they had to play Jared Grant. Now he kicked 1 goal 4. Do you think his career was at the crossroads? Do you think it's now?
No, I think it is really just beginning, actually.
You reckon?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I thought he retired. That's how much I know.
Well, he was a pick in 2004 2004, I believe.
No, it was 2007. It was
the Cochin Cruiser.
The Cochin Cruiser draft where he was picked 5 that year.
Yeah, after Marston.
It was Cruiser, Cochin, Maston, and Morton. Grant.
That's the one. But I mean, he was really dropped for his lack of intensity. And last week I thought he was quite good. And this week, having 5 scoring shots, you don't do that without putting a bit of effort in, especially against Hawthorn. So, yeah, like you said, he's certainly got room to grow. The Dogs could use to picking up a few more forwards in the draft, perhaps through free agency. I'm not sure Richmond could do with Luke McGuan anymore.
Or Essendon with Stuart Cramery, for example.
Yeah, or they'll have to trade for him, but I think picking up McGuan, Richmond probably won't get compensation for that because he's not a great player, but he
kicks goals.
He kicks goals, and he's really competitive. He really hits packs hard, makes the defenders work for it, and that's what the Dogs are lacking right now.
Even then, if someone like Jared Grant is capable of having 5 scoring shots and 16 disposals against the back line of the quality of Hawthorn, he has what it takes. I think he announced that yesterday, and even last week, his game before that was okay. I think he kicked the goal, but his presence up the ground was pretty good. So, he's kicking into gear. He's getting his opportunity. He's taking advantage of it. I think he's realised that he has to make his mark now, and otherwise, that's probably it. He's languishing in the VFL for the rest of his football career. So. It's one of those games that he had to have, and it's really good for the Bulldogs that that they've got this other option in Jared Grant who can hit the scoreboard, and also players like Gene Siracusa. They took 16 marks inside 50 yesterday against Hawthorn. That's probably the most Hawthorn's conceded all year. So having players like Gia, Jones took a few marks inside 50. Dylan Addison even switching up forward. They do have these players that can play up forward. It's just about stringing it all together.
And I suppose it's a bit about the delivery inside 50 as well. If it's one big weakness that the Dogs have, it's their disposal outside of Griffin and Murphy. It's a bit lacking, but they're certainly contested ball-winning machines, and contested anything really. They're pretty good.
Yeah, they're still one of the best contested sides in the league.
And clearances as well, and Liberatore's really stood up this year.
Yeah, he's probably been their best player, or
Griffin. Yeah.
Well, second to Griffin. I think just about anybody in the league would be second to Griffin at the moment.
Yeah.
The form he's in, he had another 37 yesterday, so he's been fantastic. But Liberatore second. I think that shows how good he's been this year.
Yep. Well, that's about it for the other games. That's for Saturday. We'll be back right after these SYN messages with an interview with Kristen Salem.
Meanwhile, on something completely different.
Well, last week I was also impressed when I got that umbrella.
That's right, you were.
That was amazing.
It's like you realise what oxygen does.
His childlike glee talk when he had this umbrella. And look at his little face now.
It was amazing. There was water everywhere. But not where I was standing.
Strap yourselves in for something completely different with Nick Mason, Tony Besselink and Little Tommy Needham. Saturdays from 7 p.m. on SYN.
Are you a fan of Monday Night Raw? Perhaps you like to watch them fight on Friday nights. Or maybe you're just interested in what's going on at NXT. Well, no matter what, if you're a WWE fan at heart, you're going to want to catch the SmackDown Hotel every Saturday from 9 p.m. only on SYN.
SYN's international feature album of the week, Smith Weston's Soft Will.
A blossoming follow-up to 2011's Diet Blonde, the Chicago Three-Piece return with a summery beach vibe on Soft Will.
Listen to the international feature album, Smith Weston's Soft Will, all this week on SYN.
Every day's a blessing, every
And you're back on Bound for Glory. Today we've got a very special interview with a young draftee coming through the ranks. He'll most likely be a first-round draft pick. His name's Christian Salem, and he belongs to Sandringham. And here's an interview with him and one of our team members, Jordan Cannell.
At the start of the year, it looked like yourselves, Geelong and Oakley, would probably be the three teams contending for the premiership on paper. But it's obviously with Metro and school footy, you like a lot of the guys at Sandringham have gone away, and you've fallen down a bit in form. Are you confident that you guys can come back and still challenge for the premiership?
Yeah, definitely. Like we know at the start of the year that it's going to be hard to make the finals because there's so many boys leave and come back all the time, and they're just thinking with our form. And as a bottom eight last year, it proved that. But just for us, it's just pretty much making sure of our results when we have all the boys. So, yeah, like we know what we're capable of and we know what we have to do, but yeah, it's hard that, you know, there's only 2 more games that we've got to battle through, then all the boys are back, and we all know that if we get into the finals, we can do some serious damage. So, yeah, just for us, it doesn't matter where we finish, it's about just getting that 8th spot, so yeah.
So I've watched you play a couple of times this year, and even within the first 15 minutes of your round 1 game at Visy Park, I noticed you have this incredible knack for just creating time and space. You can pinpoint a kick even with heavy traffic around you. Is working in congestion something that you've always excelled in? Because that's just something that you can't really teach.
Yeah, I never really thought about it. I think just whenever I really get the ball, I just, before just trying to dish it off quickly, I sort of just try and scan and see what's on, or if not, if it takes that extra couple of seconds, I'll sort of back myself to try and make that space and try and hit up that target. So yeah, I guess it's just more of just an awareness thing, so yeah.
The game's like evolved, and we're seeing recruiters pick guys who, you know, are probably more athletically gifted rather than some of the guys who are just pure footballers. As a guy who's, as a guy who's not as athletically gifted as others, what have you tried to do to master yourself, like make yourself stand out?
I guess it's just more like playing to your strengths, because obviously everyone's got different capabilities. Like sort of for me, it's more my field kicking and all that sort of stuff. So whenever I get it, I try not to waste the opportunities and really do some serious damage, I guess. And big one for me working on this year is just more my work rate. So just been trying to get that up, and yeah, it's been going well. So I just got to keep hammering that away and just really working your strengths, I guess, as much as your weaknesses.
When people talk about Sandringham, like draft picks, everyone's talking about yourself, Josh Kelly, Max Hayes, Nathan Freeman. But a bloke that I reckon's a bit stiff to miss out on those talks is Carl Amon. Can you tell me something about him that I probably wouldn't be able to find out by just watching him play?
Who's that?
Carl Amon.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's definitely slipped under the radar, and he's had some great performances. He's a booming left foot, like he's just great kick, good kid, and he works hard. Like not many people realise how hard he works on the training track, and he's always just trying to get the best out of himself. And internally, it's bagging all rating just as highly as all of us. So yeah, I guess like he's proved himself, and I'm sure most of the recruiters will know deep down how good he really is. Some serious damage.
So, what's been the biggest influence in terms of your own footballing development?
It's just more from all my previous coaches and how they just hammered home the importance of how hard you have to work to get to where you want to get, I guess. So it just doesn't start turn on match day. I guess it comes from all the training preparation and all that sort of stuff. So that's probably the biggest thing for me. Like they put the biggest influence on me by teaching me all those basics and fundamentals where it all starts from the training. That's where you improve, I guess. But that's where, for me, I'm just hammered home all those hard works, training, trying to make myself a better player.
Who do you look up to at AFL level? Not just like a comparison of like yourself, but someone you really admire.
Ever since I started following for you, I've always admired Chris Judd. He's just so professional in the way he goes about it, and I was lucky enough at the start of the year to spend a week at Carlton as part of the AIS stuff, and I followed him around a lot, and just the way he goes about it is incredible. It's so hard to explain unless you're actually watching it. Like, he's always first one on bare, last on the lead, and he's just doing all those extra sessions. Doesn't matter, even though he's proved himself now, he still wants to make a statement, and he keeps just pushing himself. It's just amazing to see how much hard work he really does.
During your time at Metro, you played with and against some really good players. Which opposition player do you reckon would you rate the highest? And was there anyone from Metro that really surprised you this year?
From Metro?
Yep.
We've had a good crop of boys. Like, we've always been strong and we've been a tight bunch. But one who's really improved since under 16s was Jake and the Harris.
Mm-hmm.
He's just improved dramatically. Like, I've played with him for the last couple of years now at Metro under 16s and played with him a bit last year. And it's just a great kid. He's always working his butt off, just trying to do all the stuff at training right, and it shows in the games, like the WA game and South Australia. His pressure was amazing. Like, it was just couldn't ask for anything more. His tackles are up and he just doesn't stop. It's 100% for the whole four quarters. So yeah, I guess like from where he was at 16s now, it's just improved dramatically.
What do you enjoy doing in your time away from football? And is there anything you're interested in doing next year? Aside from football.
My time I'm in year 12 is just more trying to get on top of the study. So, but yeah, away from football, it's just more. I don't really like going out too much. It's just more relaxing at home with my brothers, my family, and have some mates over. Just watch the footy or something. I always follow soccer pretty heavily over in England, so I tend to watch that quite a bit. Just relax with them, grab some lunch, and just nothing too special. But next year I guess away from football, I haven't really thought about it too much. It's something for the business industry, But obviously, for me now, it's just focusing more on just the school and the football. Then I guess at the end of the year, I'll sort of decide just courses wise and all that sort of stuff.
All right, thanks very much for your time this morning, Christian.
No worries.
And that was Christian Salem from Sandringham. Basically, he's a top draft pick who kicked the winning goal last week to keep them in the finals, which he mentioned about, which was fantastic. And now there's still a chance to actually be seen at Etihad later on in about a month's time. One guy who could go number one to GWS and has been quite talked about is Tom Boyd. And now we're going to speak about how, well, clubs can try and get him or another player of their choice.
Yeah, and Shitty's playing classic Shitty mind games, saying, we're not going to give him up easy, but then...
And you can tell he has so much fun when he does it.
Yeah, and then he just whines about, no one wanted to trade. And it's like, if you're going to ask for, like, Richmond, for example, Delidio and Cochin for pick number one, that's not going to happen.
Well, last year, didn't he offer, like, pick one for Delidio, pick two for Gibbs, and, they were turned down, and he said, these clubs are weak?
Yeah, something like that, and it's absolutely ridiculous. You have to compromise a little bit, and considering how well they're doing in the draft so far and how many picks, I think, is it still Gubby Allen that's doing the...
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I think he's negotiating fairly well just to get them... all these picks, and Gold Coast especially, the person who Scott Clayton, who's ever is in charge up there, to get Jack Martin and all those players while still having a lot of early picks. But I don't think GWS will need Tom Boyd. I think
no, they don't.
No way.
They'll be better served, especially if they get Buddy. Trading it off. And one of the people that I think could be in the running is Brisbane, just because they've got all these academy players. And then they'll probably have a pick around 5 or 6, so they could trade that as well as, a really good player like Jack Redden, for example.
Jack Redden's a kind of player that GWS would need as well.
Yeah.
He's a very tough contested mid, and he's a very good clearance player, very good tackler. So
exactly. Yeah. And with Brown retiring, you're not going to have to rely on Brett Staker for your lifetime
or Jordan Lyle
or Cornelius to be kicking your goals. You need a really gun forward, and Tom Boyd is that gun forward. So if you could trade pick 5 or 6 and a good mid, not a great mid, but a very good mid.
Take a good mid.
Yeah, and it's worth negotiating too, because often when teams are trying to trade, there's always the team, like supporter base, particularly those who go, oh, pick one is worth this much because, it's pick one and you're going to get a great player. When in reality, they're not all great players. Some can be very serviceable, etc. And, like, if you look back over the years, you look back at, Josh Fraser and things like that, and I know that's probably one of the lower examples, but would you trade sort of one of your top players for someone who could be like that?
Oof.
And that's the thing. Like, it's not a guaranteed thing. You know what you've got with your players, which is where a lot of clubs will keep them close to their chest.
I think the draft process has been a lot more professional in recent years. So Fraser was at 1999, was he?
Yeah.
And, there's a huge jump between that and now, and in terms of they've got the whole combine and it's all really harshly regulated, and there's all these different tests that weren't done back then, so there's less likelihood of there being draft busts. And we can see clearly with Tom Boyd that he kicked 3 goals in the first 5-10 minutes.
Oh yeah, no doubt he's a talent, but it's not just like pick one, for example. Like say the top 10 picks, even you'll look back and there's still some today that are going to end up.
Busts, yeah.
So.
But it has gotten a lot better. Like I don't know, Richmond's run of draft picks before 2006 was woeful, but it's. I mean, thinking back to even a few years ago, there haven't been any bad picks. Like from 2009, 2010, it hasn't really been, bad picks. But another team that could probably get him, Carlton, if they were to trade someone. But Malthouse has said that Gibbs and Cruiser are off the table, so I don't know how they're going to do it.
They can send Yaron up there. Probably won't get much for him.
They won't get much. No. But that's about it. So, Sheedy, you're going to have to play ball if you want any decent players. Going on to the previews for today, first up, Richmond Freo. I'll be really disappointed if Richmond doesn't win, and that's not just as a Richmond supporter, because we got within 1 point over in Subiaco with a questionable goal umpire decision. Questionable.
You're still so angry about that.
Questionable. I didn't say farcical. I was thinking it.
You were thinking it. You were thinking many other words that probably aren't suitable for Sunday 10 a.m. radio.
And Steve Morris was also out, and Hayden Ballantyne kicked 4 goals. Hayden Ballantyne is out. Steve Morris is in. They had Luke McFarlane.
And so is, Pavlich, and not Sandilands, he's not out, but Pavlich at least.
Pav was out last time, and Sandilands was out last time. So the only players, I think their 4 most important players, honestly, are out in Sandilands, Pavlich, McFarlane and Ballantyne. They're all out.
Sandilands is out.
Yeah. He didn't...
Sandilands has got the flu. He didn't fly down.
Yeah, he didn't fly over.
He's on the
He'll be a
team sheet, yeah.
And basically... Yeah, if we don't win, I'll be annoyed. Because McFarlane took us to the cleaners, Ballantyne took us to the cleaners, and Morris, who's been really good at checking these small forwards, he can actually go to Walters instead of Ballantyne now. And at the MCG, I mean, the weather looked quite nice. It's forecast for showers and not so good, but if it's clear, I think Richmond will win.
You quoted a stat, I think last week, Matt, I don't know if it was on air or not, but when's the last time that Richmond have beaten a Ross Lions side?
I can't remember.
Never. They're 10-0.
We've never beaten them yet. So even at St Kilda,
and you're hoping they're going to win today.
Yeah, we drew against him, Ross Lions last St Kilda side. We lost by less than 10 points twice last year, and we lost by 1 point at the start of the year. So this is our time.
It's not the G, so...
Yeah.
I think it does depend a lot on how players like Steve Morris and that, can pressure, I think, Freo's forwards the other way. I think, players like Main and Walters and De Boer and...
De Boer always wrecks us.
And De Boer has a good record against Richmond as well. And if they can resist the Freo forward press, which does get weakened considerably with Ballantyne out, I think they are a possession side. They can control it, and I think they can win. But I think for safety's sake, I'll tip Freo.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm going to definitely tip Freo only because how many times this year have we seen that Pavlich, Sandy, McFarlane, etc. are out? Oh, they're not going to win, and then they win. So it's tough. I'm going to go Freo.
They do have good depth, and the structures really hold up, even if those key players aren't playing.
I'm going to go draw just because. I can't decide.
Damn you.
Just keep it as a draw.
Who we got
again? Adelaide and Geelong.
Adelaide and Geelong. In Adelaide?
Yes.
In Adelaide.
So
it won't make a difference.
Yeah. Maybe about 10 points.
But, Geelong are really just trotting along nicely, wrecking teams in their path.
Doing Geelong, being
Geelong, yeah. Steve Johnson won't be playing this week. Thanks very much,
Suspended for the
Stevie.
billionth time this year.
Yeah. Hopefully he's learned his lesson this time, not to drop knees into people's faces.
Hopefully he's learned his 18,000th lesson.
But wouldn't be surprised if he hadn't.
Him and Jared Waite will get along very nicely.
Yeah, trade Jared Waite.
I don't think you get much for Jared Waite.
Yeah. Is David Mackay playing this week?
I believe so.
Yeah, because he's very unhappy supposedly over there, so he might be seeking a trade back to Victoria at the end of the year. And last but not least, game, or you were going to mention something?
I was going to mention something before we do the tips for that. I think Mackay is one of those players, and Richard Douglas as well. They have to have big games because they're the players that deliver it inside 50, and Geelong feed on turnovers. They capitalise on those. So if they can control the ball and keep the ball, as long as they're not turning it over, then they can stand a chance. They won by 50 points last time, so they do have a chance. But I'll tip Geelong.
Do you think Geelong give you a little bit more time to take possession of the ball in the clearances? Because they're ranked like bottom 4 for clearances in the whole league. So maybe teams need to not worry about, oh crap, we're playing Geelong, just bomb it forward, and rather think for an extra second and maybe get a bit better disposal inside 50 so they don't capitalise on these turnovers a bit more.
I think it's a good point. The way they structure up behind the ball as well is a big part of why they're such a good team as well. But I think Adelaide can capitalise on that. We know they have been a good contested side, so I think we'll tip Geelong though. I think that's pretty unanimous. The last game, West Coast Sydney, I think should be a Sydney win. They won pretty heavily last time, and that was when West Coast were actually a top 5 side, and Sydney really started their run when they did that. So they won by 130 points last week against GWS. I think they're really starting to kick into gear. I think it would be another fairly considerable victory for Sydney.
Yeah, and Nick Nat's not in great form either. So it's going to be a lot easier for Mike Pike, who's been a really improved player this year.
Yeah,
even towards the end of last year was great, one of their best in the grand final. And Cox hasn't been great. Not many great players. Pritis has actually been probably West Coast's most consistent player.
Chris Maston, I'd put
Maston as well, yeah.
And Josh Kennedy.
Oh, yeah, of course, Kennedy.
Always a close one between these two, though, or apart from when you said recently, but it's always been...
Apart from the last
few. Apart from the last few, but it's usually a pretty good contest, so I'm going to say Sydney, but by under 10.
Goals or points?
Points.
Okay. I got to go with Sydney as well by 30.
I'll go Sydney by under 10 goals.
Yeah, Sydney by at least 5 goals, I reckon.
All right, that's about it. Be sure to be following us on Twitter and the Facebook. Meet me there. It's Bound for Glory FM on Twitter and Bound for Glory on Facebook. You've been listening to the Bound for Glory...
Bound for Glory News, of course.
Read it. That's all.
BoundForGloryNews.com. That's a very good site with all the Rising Stars coverage and all opinion AFL content. And on Twitter and Facebook as well. Bound for, that's the number 4, Glory News on Twitter, and Bound for Glory News on Facebook. So search them up, follow, love everything we do because it's awesome.
It is quite awesome. Especially the under-18s coverage. It's been really good this year. But you've been listening to Bound for Glory, and have a good Sunday.
I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?